Most of the time when we hear about the housing market, the headlines focus on the broader Seattle area, county numbers, or even national trends. But what's happening in a specific community like Silver Firs can sometimes look quite different. In this update, we'll take a look at what actually happened in the Silver Firs housing market this past month and what those numbers may mean for homeowners here in the area. And as homeowners here, it's also important to stay aware of the changes happening around our community. One project that's been getting quite a bit of attention lately is the Eastview Village development nearby. You've probably noticed the land clearing that's taking place already there. I'll come back to that toward the end of the video and talk a little bit about why it's something worth keeping an eye on. But first, let's take a look at what actually happened in the Silver Firs market this past month. Silver Firs is one of the areas I watch pretty closely because we usually only see a handful of homes sell each month. And when that happens, those few sales can actually tell us quite a bit about what buyers are thinking. February gave us a pretty interesting snapshot of what's really happening here right now. And while the national housing headlines can feel a little dramatic some days, what's happening locally often tells a much clearer story. I also track this community regularly because Silver Firs tends to behave a little differently than the broader Everett market. So let's take a look at what actually happened here in Silver Firs in February. During the month, we saw 6 new listings come on the market with 5 homes available for sale, 4 homes going under contract, and 4 closing. So inventory here in Silver Firs is still relatively limited, which tends to keep things fairly stable because buyers who want to be in this community don't have a huge number of real options to choose from. Homes that sold in February took about 41 days on average to sell. Buyers are still active, but they are being a little bit more thoughtful than they were during the really competitive years. They're taking the time to evaluate homes, look at them carefully, pricing, and make sure that the numbers really work before they move forward. Now, before we talk about home prices, it's helpful to remember something about communities like Silver Firs. Because the number of homes that sell each month is usually pretty small, the statistics can really move around depending on the type of homes that sell. If a larger or maybe more updated home sells one month, that can push the median up. If a smaller or more original home sells the next month, it can pull that number down. So rather than really looking at just one number, it's always helpful to look at it as a snapshot of activity in the market. The official median price reported by the Northwest MLS for February was $1,029,000. But at the time of this recording, when we include the most up-to-date March closings that have already been reported, the median based on those sales is actually closer to $914,500. So that gives you a really good example of how numbers can kind of shift a bit in smaller housing pockets like Silver Firs, just really depending on what homes happen to sell during a given month. Homes sold for about $20,000 below their asking price on average, which tells us that we're seeing a little bit more price negotiation than we did during the peak market years when homes were often selling well above their list price. What's interesting though is that none of these sales reported seller concessions, which suggests that while buyers might be negotiating a bit on the price, sellers are still holding fairly strong positions overall. Right now, the key factors tend to be pricing strategy and preparation. Homes that are priced well and show well are still attracting serious buyers. There were also a couple of interesting sales worth mentioning. One home sold for $1,029,000 after just 2 days being on the market, and another sold in just 1 day for $800,000. While another property took about 41 days to sell at $665,000. This just really shows you how pricing, condition, and presentation can really influence a home and how quickly it can sell in this market. As I mentioned earlier, another thing happening nearby is the Eastview Village development. Work has begun on the site, and it's something many people here in the Silver Firs community have been asking about. Projects like these typically unfold over several years, but it's something I will continue keeping an eye on as part of what's happening in the area. And because every home and every situation can be a little different, understanding what changes like this might mean for your own home often comes down to looking a little more closely at the details. If you ever find yourself wondering whether this might be the right time to sell your home, or you just want to talk through what is happening here in Silver Firs, whether it's the current market or changes like the Eastview Village development, those are always conversations I'm happy to have. Sometimes just taking a quick look at the numbers together can bring a lot of clarity about what your own home might look like in today's market. And as always, I'll continue tracking what's happening here in Silver Firs and sharing updates as things evolve. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me today, and until next time, I'll see you in the next update.